So we are delighted to be joined in studio today by an NFL Hall of Famer, a man who played 17 seasons in the league, 10 with the Steelers, 1 with the 49ers, 4 with the Ravens and 2 with the Raiders. He played in 3 Super Bowls with 3 different teams, winning with the Baltimore Ravens. He's a former NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He was selected to 11 Pro Bowls. He was the member of the NFL 100-year anniversary team and has the most pick sixes in NFL history. Rod Woodson, welcome to Dublin.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
That's some CV. Oh, my God. I think you might be the best football player of all time.
Oh, I don't know about that, but, I've been blessed, got to go to a great organization, didn't have a bunch of injuries, so I got to play 17 years, but my journey, going from Indiana, the small town in Midwest Indiana in the U.S., to get to play for one of the best organizations starting out in the NFL with the Steelers, and learning like the little things that really, really matter was a blessing for me to come into the league like that.
And having you here is obviously great to get you in studio, like a legendary NFL player such as yourself. But it's also, I believe you were 60 yesterday. Is that true?
60. I turned 60 yesterday.
You look like you could still play.
I can play Xbox. I can play a little golf. That's about it.
Did you do anything nice for your birthday in Dublin?
No, we just relaxed. I'm just blessed to have another year under my belt. But it was great to be here and have me a pint of Guinness. So that was good. That was a good birthday.
And you were mentioning this is your 5th time in Dublin,
fifth time
in Ireland.
5th time in Ireland.
And in terms of the NFL coming to Dublin, you think Dublin's a good city to host an international game?
I really do, especially with the history of Mr. Rooney coming over and being an ambassador to Ireland for such a long time, and laying the groundworks of what he did and the foundation that he built here, that history that American football has had over the course of time internationally. And back in the day when I played, we had the American Bowls, which was like the preseason games that really didn't matter. But the NFL was testing the waters in different places to see. They didn't do it here in Ireland, but they still knew that Ireland was a place that loved sports. And, the Steelers just have that history here. They have that brand here. And, I think it's going to be great, seeing the college games come through here and the way the fans ate it up. I think it's going to be fun to watch and then thinking also about the stadium itself, the history of the stadium that it's going to be played at. It's another great thing. It's like you just put it all together. You got a great organization, one of the older organizations in the National Football League, coming to one of the historical stadiums here in Ireland. It's going to be fun to watch.
How do the players feel about the international games? Like, it's obviously a lot of travelling, but they get to see new cultures, go to new cities. Like, we've seen them go to Germany. The reception has been amazing from fans. They've been in Wembley and now Tottenham Stadium in London for a long time, and now we can't wait to have the Steelers over in Ireland. Are the players fans of the games?
Yeah, I think they are. You would think that players travel quite a bit in the off season. A lot of guys don't. I was talking to Pat Freiermuth, who's with the Steelers tight end, and Pat is his first time internationally being outside of the country. And I was like, what? And like in my head, because me and my wife always traveled in the off season, at least to go to one different place each year. But I think guys like seeing the culture because yes, it's a regular season game. It does matter. So you're not. It's not like it's a preseason, so you still are in season. So you're trying to make sure that you're doing everything that you would normally do during the regular week. But with that being said, you still are in a foreign place, and I think a lot of guys love going out and seeing the different cultures, seeing the different sites. And for a lot of the guys who have never traveled, across countries and country lines, it's been big for those guys. But I think it's also been big seeing the fan base that they see from different people and different individuals outside of the U.S. And I think I don't know if they're surprised, but I think they really enjoy seeing the other countries rooting them on and seeing that, hey, you know what, they got my jersey on, but they're in, being in Germany, being in Barcelona, coming here this year. It's going to be fun it's fun to see that. And I think the players do embrace it.
I think Germany set the bar high with Country Roads, that rendition of Country Roads when the Bucks were there a couple of years ago. It was
Right.
one of the great, so that Dublin will have a lot to live up to. But as you said, the Rooney family should be able to give some good recommendations for maybe a few pubs to go to for a pint of Guinness when the guys are here later in the year. Your own story is so fascinating. I was, obviously know you, the Hall of Fame player, Super Bowl champion with the Ravens, obviously played for the Steelers for so long. But then looking back, I noticed when you first got drafted in 1987, you were the 10th pick in the draft. You held out for 95 days. So you and the Steelers didn't get off to the most, the most smoothest starts.
But you know what I did? It allowed me to come over here. It allowed me to run tracks. I ran track. It was like my first love. And then I got better in football. But it allowed me to run in the European circuit and to make my first visit when I was 22 years old. And I was up in Belfast and enjoyed it. Matter of fact, I bought a sweater in 1987 from a lady who was knitting the sweater in the lobby in the hotel. I still wear it.
Still fits.
It's brand new. It still looks like it's brand new. So I was like, I love that culture, but like the food here is very similar to the food in the Midwest, where I'm from in Indiana. It's beef and potatoes. That's what I eat. So it's it was fun to come over here, but it allowed me to see different places when I didn't sign with the Steelers. But I'm glad I eventually inked the deal and got over there with the Steelers.
You mentioned your upbringing in Indiana a couple of times, and that's your home and your heritage. Quite a unique upbringing in some ways, in that I think your mother was from the north and of German descent.
Yep.
Then your dad was from the south and of African American descent. So was that a unique dynamic growing up, or was your story unique in that way?
Yeah, I mean, especially back in the 70s in Indiana, being a mixed race, it's a little different. It was a little rougher. But yeah, my mother her maiden name is Dorflin, German descent from the middle parts of Germany. My dad's was from Tennessee. And that was a little different. But, one thing that taught me is growing up, when I say, hey, brother doesn't mean we're of blood. Brothers mean that we have the same takes, the same likes, the same disposition in life. So when I do say that to people and to a lot of my buddies, it's not that they're my true brother, but we just have the same disposition in life. And that's one thing I learned at an early age, because we had half our family didn't like us because we were half white, and we had another part of our family didn't like us because we was half black. But the one thing that we always would say is that we're the best of both worlds, that we walk on both sides of the railroad tracks, and we're very comfortable doing so. Yeah,
because I can imagine very formative experiences at that time, because a quote that was associated with your Hall of Fame enshrinement, and I think you've said it a few times, I think it comes from your dad: if you can't dream and hope, I don't know why you're here. So to what extent was that upbringing and his influence a big driving force in your athletic career?
Yeah, he wasn't a real athlete per se, but he wanted us outside the house. He wanted us to do things. And the first thing that we used to do was swim. So we swam competitive I did it for like 8 years, and then I started running track after that. And then my brothers did it up through college. But just to be outside, go be outside. I mean, that's what our thing was. Go be outside all summer long. We would be on swim pool. We would go to the basketball courts. We'll go down to the park and play basketball and baseball. We'll play tackle football in the winter, right in the middle of this, right on the concrete. So he encouraged that. I think the biggest thing for me is that he allowed me to be in our neighborhood was a mixed culture. My neighbor to the left of me was Hispanic family, the Lopez's, and the person to the right of me was a European family. So it's like, and we were the mixed family. We're like right in the mix of all of it. So it was fun to be around that type of neighborhood. And I grew up having all kind of friends, all different colors, all different races, all different religions. So it was easy to get along for me, along with everybody, as long as we had the same likes.
So you're clearly like an unbelievable athlete. As you said, you ran track, and you mentioned when you went to Belfast and that kind of holdout with the Steelers, you ran the fourth fastest time in the world that year for 110-meter hurdles.
Yeah, I was very lucky, very lucky.
Not bad on your time off from American football, but then obviously, you went to Purdue University, you played on offense, you played on defense, you played in special teams, so a bit of an all-rounder.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, you got drafted in 1987. I was looking earlier, interestingly, Jim Harbaugh was in that draft as well. People might be familiar with him, the coach
Jimmy,
of the Chargers. And then obviously going to the Steelers, you return punts, you return kickoffs as well. Like, what was that all-rounder nature to your game like?
Well, I mean, when you grow up, you kind of, when you're in high school, you play both ways normally, most schools. And going in and playing, I mean, I didn't think I wasn't a great football player when I first got to high school. So I was a skinny little fart. I was, I was faster than I was better in football. I was an All-American in track my sophomore year. In football, I was honorable mention All-State my junior year. But then my junior year to senior year, I grew like 3.5 inches. I gained like 20, 22 pounds. I got bigger, faster, stronger. And then my senior year, I became an All-American. They're like, well, heck, you're going to get a scholarship in football. And I'm like, I want to run track. And they're like, okay, whoever lets me play football and run track, that's the school I'm going to go to. And Purdue was like, hey, you come here, you can do both. I'm like, where's the pen?
So it worked out pretty well for you. You said, got to the Steelers. I think the first couple of years, I suppose, finding your way, and then you become an established, one of the best cornerback in the league. Arguably, you win Defensive Player of the Year in 1993. And 1995 is a particularly challenging year for you. An unbelievable year for the Steelers team, but you tear your ACL in the first game of the year. Yeah. Bill Cowher's the coach. He's come in at this stage from Chuck Noll, who was the legendary Steelers coach of the 70s. It's kind of a transitional period. But they go on to get to the Super Bowl. And you have this journey from, I suppose, the moment you tore your ACL to get back in the same year. So you had to have a knee reconstruction. And tell us a bit about how you managed to get back to play in that Super Bowl against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to my 10 years of being in Pittsburgh. I've had Chuck Noll was one of the best coaches in the history of the NFL. He was my head coach. Tony Dungy was my defense coordinator and my defensive back coach. Tony leaves after the first 2 years. We get another guy named Rod Rust who comes in, who became kind of like the person to like flip the switch mentally in my head, because Tony would talk to me, but really nice. How are you doing? What were you thinking? Rod Rust would say the kind of same things to me, but he'll be cussing me out while he's saying it. You mother effer, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I needed both of them. Those guys leave. Then we get Bill Cowher, Dom Capers, and Dick LeBeau, who comes in to be on the defensive side. So I had all these great coaches. And if I didn't have Bill when that happened, so in that 95 season, I tore my Achilles, I think it was like the 10th, or excuse me, my ACL was like the 10th play of that opening game. And I remember him and I and the doctor come Monday morning, or sitting in the office, and the doctor is like, yeah, you got 3 to 4 months recovery, but it's going to take a little longer for it to all heal. And I'm like, 3 to 4 months. Okay, September, November, December. I can get back. And Bill looked at me and was like, what? I'm like, I can make it back. I can heal. I can come back. I can play. Because I thought we were good enough. I mean, obviously, I thought the year before, in 94, we had a really good team when we lost the AFC Championship game to San Diego, and they go on and got just blasted in the Super Bowl. So I knew we had a good football team. I just knew that if I can just find a way to stay on the active roster, because once you put on injury reserve, you're off for the whole year. It's not like today's game where you can go on injury reserve and come back off somewhere else during the season. You can't do that. Back in the day, you couldn't do that. So Bill listened to me, heard me, gave me that opportunity. Luckily for me, I had a guy named Carnell Lake that played on our roster, and Carnell moved from strong safety to corner, and he played at a high level. And we played with, and a lot of people don't know, we played with 52 guys on our active roster all year long. Most teams had 53. We had 52 because he kept that opening spot for me throughout the whole year. And we just kept, nobody else got hurt, which was a blessing for me, because if anybody else would have got hurt, he would have had to put me on IR just to bring some other guys up to fill the roster. So for that, I give Bill all the credit. Every time I call him like once a year. I text him once a year and say, man, I definitely appreciate you giving me my first opportunity, because I played in my first Super Bowl, even though I only played 16 games or about 16 plays. I got to play in my first Super Bowl in that 95 season, because you just never know when you can go back. That was like, and that for me was year 8 of my career. And I didn't know I was going to go to 2 more after that. But having Bill, I think if I had any other coach in the league, I don't know if they would have let me stay on the active roster. They probably would have put me on injury reserve, and I would never got to play.
I know Boomer Esiason's among those who says you could certainly make an argument you're the best defensive back that ever played the game. And the point of difference he would allude to is that other elite cover corners, perhaps when a tackle arose, they wouldn't be as inclined to get stuck in as you were. Like, you weren't afraid of the physical stuff. Can you just tell us a bit about the psychology of being a defensive back? Because it is quite a unique position in football where plays could go by where you're not targeted, or you're
right,
but you still have to be locked in because one play could decide the game.
Yeah, I always say, if you look at the defense and you have the off defensive line, if they make a bad play or miss a play, the linebackers can help them. Well, if the linebackers have a bad play or miss a play, the secondary can help them. Well, we miss a play, it's a touchdown. So you can't really have a bad play. But I think the biggest thing for me is, and the way that I looked at it is, like, I was trying to be very versatile. I can play corner, safety, nickel, dime. I remember under Chuck Noll, I played linebacker in one of our packages, which is probably not the best thing that I played at, or the position. But having this being versatile and doing different things, and I played football in the Midwest. I'm a blue collar type football player. I play with my hard hat on. I didn't talk a whole bunch. I like to hit. I mean, I was the youngest of 3 boys. I got beat up a lot when I was a little kid from my older brothers. So I got used to taking a beating and going back out there and keep playing. And that was a part of Midwest football. I mean, when you look at the Big Ten where I went to school, the Big Ten plays that black and blue style of football. That's what I like to play. So for me, playing football was a physicality part of it, but the mental part of it was, I remember Chuck Noll told me in '87, football's a simple game, not easy to play at a high level on a consistent basis. And it's so true. It's not real complicated. It's not like we're sending somebody to the moon in a rocket ship, right? We're not doing that. But to figure things out daily, like to learn things from your coaches, and every coach is different. Like if all 3 of us were watching a football game, you're going to see a play. We're all going to see the same play, but we all see something different out of the play. So everybody's eyes are different. And
I trust you, to be fair, over me.
But you're going to see something that maybe I don't take notice to. You're going to see something maybe I don't take notice to. But then we all learn from each other. And I think that's what Chuck was telling me. He was like, you can learn from everybody. So the one thing that I started doing is learning from my receiver coach. I would go to our quarterback coach. Then I'll go to our offense coordinator. I would say, okay, if I did this, what would you do? And then they would tell me. I'm like, oh. Then I started everything that they would tell me that they would do against me, I would start using that against them and other quarterbacks. And I think that helped me quite a bit mentally to go out there. But then I remember Chuck always say, you got to remember when you do make a mistake, they're going to come back to that. And so anytime I made a mistake, I would say, okay, they're going to come back. I don't know exactly when they're going to come back and try to take advantage of me making a mistake, but they're going to come back and try me one more time. And I try to do something a little bit different to show them something that I think that they see, and then I do the opposite. So that to me was the mental part of it. But then also the mental part is just being physical. And you're going to be hurt, you're going to be cold, you're going to be hot, but fighting through that and still go out and play.
And on that point, because obviously athletically very gifted, given your track background and multi-sport athlete when you were growing up, but you led the league in interceptions at the back end of your career when you were about 37 with the Raiders. So that must have been very important, what Coach Noll said to you, and about becoming a student of the game, because when you didn't have the athletic feats that you had when you're in your early 20s at 37, you could still read a game presumably better than most.
Yeah, everything kind of, how you hear athletes in all sports say it kind of slows down, and it did. It's like you start saying, okay, this offense coordinator likes to call this type of play at this type of this part of the game. This quarterback likes to do this in this part of the game, and all the things that they do, you would use it against them. And then I would say, okay, well, if he sees me step this way, he think I'm going to go that way to the left, but I'm really going back to the right. I'm just waiting. I'm trying to get him to throw the ball so I can pivot and go get an interception. So you try to use all that against them, and all the little things that my coaches when I was so young taught me. Because in my 10 years, if I wasn't in Pittsburgh my first 10 years, I mean, all the knowledge from Chuck, from Tony, from Rod Russ, Dick LeBeau was he's a Hall of Fame player, but if you can go in the Hall of Fame twice, he would go in the Hall of Fame as a coach also. And so learning from him and Bill and Dom Capers, all that knowledge that those guys got over that's like 100 years of football combined with all those guys. And I got to learn that in a 10-year period. And could I take it all in? No, I couldn't take it all in, but I can take bits and pieces. And what we used to say, like if you're a carpenter, you're an apprentice carpenter. So when you first start, you don't have that many tools on your tool belt. But as you keep going, you learn more and more and more, and all those little tools that you can use, you put them on your tool belt. By the time 8 years into it, you're a master carpenter. And that's the philosophy I had. Obviously, when I first came into it, I was athletic. But as I started learning, everything came really slow, and I'm starting saying, all the stuff that you guys like to do, I'm going to use that against you. I'm going to show you one thing. I'll do another. I hope you throw the football that way. And I just got to catch it. And that coach used to say all the time, Tony Dungy used to say, you catch the ones that come to you, you'll lead the league. Defensive backs aren't the best receivers. That's why they play defensive back. So we do catch the vast majority, but not all of them.
Well, the most pick sixes in NFL history speaks for itself. But I think the most impressive thing, I listed off a lot of your achievements earlier, is that you're somehow beloved by both the Steelers fans and the Ravens fans. You're probably the only man who can say that on planet Earth, who is worshipped by both supporters. And that's because obviously after 10 years with the Steelers, you were a free agent, you went to the 49ers for 1 year first, then ended up on the Ravens, and ended up on the greatest defense, arguably of all time. I think I looked earlier, you conceded 10 points per game during the regular season, and I think it was 5.5 on average during the playoffs over 4 matches.
Yeah.
And Ronan's in heaven here as the Ravens fan in the room. But what was that experience like, that year like? Because even now, 25 years later, people remember the 2000 defense.
Yeah, it wasn't a 1 year thing. So I got there in '98, and everything I learned in Pittsburgh. So the standard is the standard. So understanding what they did and how we did things in Pittsburgh, I took a lot of that to Baltimore, because Baltimore, when I first got there, didn't have, as players, they didn't have a philosophy, didn't have a pattern of doing things. We didn't always run to the ball when I first got there. And we didn't have our players-only meeting on Fridays when I first got there. And Ray Lewis was young. So Ray was in his third year. So Ray was, implementing all the different things that we did in Pittsburgh. We did it year one. Guys didn't really like it because it was extra work. It really is extra work that you have to take it upon yourself to do as a player to get better. And players didn't like it the first year. A lot of those players who didn't like it the first year, they got rid of. Second year, we got a little bit better. We were 8-8 the second year. We got a new coach in Brian Billick. Ray got a little bit better the second year. He used his voice even more his second year. And the third year, it all clicked. It took 3 years to get to that point. But when we got to that point, you couldn't run the ball against us because we had Sam Adams and Tony Siragusa up front. And we had Michael McCrary and Rob Burnett on the end. We had 3 linebackers that all could run, and Ray and Jamie Sharper and Peter Boulware. And then in the secondary, we had Dwayne Starks before, a young rookie corner. We just got Chris McAllister. I moved to safety, which was my natural position that I loved to play. I played it when I was a little kid. So I moved back to safety. And then we got Kim Herring and Chris Harris for our other safety. And we just played lights out. It was just like, you're not going to run the ball against us. So as a defensive back, I didn't have to worry about the run. Like, yeah, I'll come up and make the run if you guys miss. But you're not moving Tony Siragusa and Sam Adams. So it was fun to watch. And yes, I believe you're right. I think we did have the best defense, arguably, for one given year. Now, I know the 85, 86 Bears were really, really good for a couple years. But for that one given year, man, we had a real fun defense.
And the culture of the Ravens now, you see it on their memorabilia and stuff they sell, play like a Raven. And
Play like a Raven.
It's a big mantra, but it's a relatively new franchise in its current form. In the mid-90s, obviously, was established. So you were a very important part in like making that ethos. And probably no coincidence the players that were drafted either. Ozzie Newsome had his fingerprints over that.
Yes, he did.
And the likes of Ed Reed and Ray Lewis, who you mentioned, and laterally Terrell Suggs and these kinds of people. So whether they intended when they first formed that this was going to be their way of doing things, you can see in the way they draft to the present day that they certainly go for these kinds of leaders and players.
Right. Yeah, I think when you look at, and I know the Raven fans and I know the Steeler fans hate me saying this, they are very similar in nature in franchises, right? So you take the Rooney family and what they do for the community, what they do, how they lead their organization from the top down, from the general manager to the head coach, to the coaching staff, to the players, to the field. Steve Busciotti does the exact same thing. And so when Steve first came in, when we first got there, it was Art Modell. And then Steve bought in half of the team, then he took the rest half of the team. But Steve does the exact same thing that the Rooney family does. In the way he structures his organization, it goes down to the general manager, goes down to the coaching staff, goes down to the players, goes down to the field. That's why when you see those two teams play each other, every single game's close. Every single game's like within 7 points and one score. I just think when you have a structure like that in each organization and each franchise, it is fun to watch. And the Ravens way is really the standard is the standard. So the Steelers' motto is the standard is the standard. You better have that standard or you're not going to be there. The Raven way is either you're going to play like a Raven or you're not going to be there. It's really the same thing, two different colors. I know they don't like me saying it. I know they don't. I know it. I get it. But they're so much alike. But it starts with the owners, and then it starts with the head coaches who are just leaders of men, and Mike Tomlin and Harbaugh. They're just leaders of men, and it trickles down to all the players that they get year in and year out on the field.
When they play each other, who do you support? Who are you rooting for?
I don't root for either, but what I say is that I'm biracial in life. I'm biracial in football.
Well, it's a little bit indulgent of me to say, so I hope Will doesn't mind, but I started watching NFL around 2007, and you were on the BBC in the UK calling that game as the Giants and the Patriots. So I knew nothing about anything. I just knew the Patriots were going for an undefeated season. I thought it was interesting. But you were doing the coverage, and before they introduced you, they played your highlights from the Super Bowl in 2000. I thought you were really cool, so I said, I'm going to support the Ravens. I didn't know you'd played for the Steelers for years before that, but you're the reason I support the Ravens. So
that's awesome. That is awesome.
And I just want to ask you, like, it's interesting what you said there about the Steelers and the Ravens, that in a league that's built for parity and up and down and other teams should ascend, the best thing about the Ravens and the Steelers, they're always with that standard. They're always thereabouts, like even when they're not going through amazing seasons. Like Mike Tomlin just churns out winning seasons. The Ravens are always competing.
Right.
So they're really solid. I just wonder for both teams, like the Steelers have made moves in the last couple of days, big moves, and potentially more at the quarterback position. The Ravens, somewhat frustratingly for me, because they're being sensible, but I just wish they would go and maybe make a splash and maybe get...
Well, yeah, I think the Steelers, know that they have to make some moves to catch up to the Ravens. Because the Ravens, they have a good roster. They really do. They have a pretty good roster. And having Lamar as your quarterback, which I think the one thing that the Steelers are lacking at the quarterback position. I mean, you get DK Metcalf, along with all the other athletes that you got on the offensive side of it. They got a good young offensive line. They need a quarterback. Most teams in this league, if you don't have a quarterback, unless you have a lights-out defense and all your other positions are outstanding players, it's going to be tough. But to see, I know the Ravens fan base will want to see them make another move. They don't have to. They don't have to make that splash play like I think the Steelers had to make, because I think the Steelers are trying to get back to where they want to be, which is being on top of the division. And they know, both teams know, to win the North, they got to beat the other team. All right, the Ravens know to win the North, you got to beat the Steelers. So it's gonna be that battle. Do they need? I don't think they just need to make a splash play, because you got some really good players already. They got some young players. They got a really good roster. I thought they had a really good draft last year. So I think they're heading in the right direction. As long as you have Lamar Jackson out there, number 8.
Should be 3-time MVP, but from my opinion.
Thank you.
Put it there.
Come on, man.
Ronan didn't talk about anything else in the office for a good 3 weeks, I'd say, around the MVP.
Heck, I was saying
I'm wearing the T-shirt.
This is the thing I'd say about the MVP. Okay, listen, Josh Allen is a tremendous player. He is. If you think about the MVP voting or MVP standard for quarterbacks, we would always say, okay, quarterbacks should have 35 to 40 passing touchdowns and a couple rushing touchdowns. He had 26. Now, I get he had a total of almost 40 with his rushing touchdowns, but most of the rushing touchdowns, or not, can't say most, but I say half of his rushing touchdowns were from the 1 yard line, 2 yard line. But you're still a quarterback. And Lamar had 41, and then he had, I think, 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns. So to me, it's like I thought he was definitely the MVP. I think of anybody that really knows football, if you really watch football, you do give a lot of love to Josh Allen. Yep. I do, because he's a big, massive. He is a tremendous quarterback. But the way Lamar played last year, and the way he was throwing the football with his completion percentage, and he only had 4 interceptions in a regular season, is tremendous. Should he win the MVP? Yes, he should have won the MVP. Absolutely.
I've never seen a man feel more vindicated than he does right now, I think. Rod, we'll let you go in just a minute. Just want to ask you 2 quick questions. How often do you wear your Super Bowl ring?
Never.
Never?
Nope.
Keep it in a safe place?
It's in a safe place. The only thing I ever wear is my Hall of Fame ring.
I was going to say, that was my second question. The jacket.
I never wear the jacket.
Why not?
It's too bright.
Gold.
It's gold. It's like you look at the jacket and say, who wears gold jackets? Not too many people wear like gold anywhere. So you've like it's gonna bring attention. That's the first thing. The ring though is really nice. The ring is blue. It's massive size. Looks like a Super Bowl ring. That has more meaning to me than a Super Bowl ring. Super Bowl ring, yes, we get winners every single year, but I was the 253rd player in the history of pro football to go into the Hall of Fame. That means a lot. That means more to me than winning the Super Bowl, because it's individually, but it also is collectively, because I needed my teammates around me throughout my career. I needed my coaches that I got throughout especially my first 10 years of being in Pittsburgh, who just taught me the game the way they did. So when I left, I could take that with me. And that was, to me, coming from this small town in Fort Wayne, Indiana, started playing football because my brothers played football, and I was a skinny little fart that I got a little bit better and better and better. Never thought I would be playing pro ball. It wasn't in my cards. To me, I was going to run track, and then I was going to go into the military like my brother. And they kept saying, no, you're pretty good football player. I think you're going to go somewhere. And to have that opportunity to be, the first Hall of Famer from my hometown, to me, that's the ring I wear on a daily, or not daily, but when I go to different places to let people see the ring, wear the ring, take pictures with the ring. That's an amazing feat.
All right, congrats on an amazing career. Thanks so much for coming in today.
I enjoyed it, guys.